Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing on this fine Tuesday morning? It's good to see you. I see we've got 3 people in the house. Hopefully Mel is here. I'm not sure if it's Andre, Xiaoyun. If you're in the audience, go ahead and send me a remind text. Let me know you're here. It's good to see everybody today. We are in the next to last week of this class. So you have this week, then we have Thanksgiving next week, and then after that, we have no class. So all we've got is 2 more weeks of content. Now we're going to cover 4 chapters, such as life, but we've only got 2 weeks left of stuff to do. Hope everybody's doing well. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so today, chapter 17 is physical development in late adulthood. Chapter 18 is cognitive development in late adulthood. So we're going to do physical development and cognitive development in late adulthood this week. And then next week we're going to do socio-emotional development in late adulthood, and we're going to do death and dying. So that's what we're going to do this week and next week. That's our plan for the rest of this semester. This week we're talking about physical development and cognitive development in adulthood. So let's go ahead and get started if we could. So let's talk a little bit about longevity. You know, the maximum lifespan is the number of years any individual of this species is thought to live, right? So for humans, we think the maximum lifespan is about 100 to 125 years. For comparison's sake, let's talk about the house sparrow. The house sparrow, if everything goes perfectly, can probably live for 13 years. That's its maximum lifespan. Now contrast that with the term average life expectancy. And that's the number of years the average person or the average sparrow is likely to live. So if we looked at all the sparrows or people born at a certain time, what is the point at which half of that particular cohort is dead? And that's your average life expectancy. So right here in the United States, the average life expectancy in 30 is 81 years for women and 77 years for men. That means women born at that time can expect to live, half of them will live to be at least 81 years of age. And you'll see men's lifespan is not quite as long. Average lifespan is not as long as women. In fact, you're going to see men are more likely to die pretty much throughout every age group, leading to a shorter lifespan. Now, let's compare. So if you think about it, the average human lives to be about 67% of their lifespan. Let's contrast that with the house sparrow. The average lifespan of the sparrow is 3 years, which is only 25% of the lifespan. So if you look at the picture right below me, you see sort of these survivorship curves. And what you can see is that human survivorship curve looks a lot different than the one for birds. And that's because of this developmental perspective that we've talked about. This is sort of that rectangularization of the death curve that I mentioned earlier in the semester. You know what? Research suggests that environment is the biggest predictor of lifespan, and environment definitely matters. And what you're going to see is that a lot of the health behaviors of people who live in South Korea really maximize lifespan. And so the estimate for 2030 for South Korea is that the average person will live to be at least 90. That's 75% of the maximum lifespan. So that's an even longer expectation for a healthy and happy life. Why are there differences in life expectancy across countries? Well, you know, access to medical care is a huge predictor. And that's why in the United States, when we talk about access to medical care and insurance for all and medical services for all, you know, it really does matter in the quality and length of life. So access to medical care. You know, unfortunately, the United States has a higher infant and child mortality rate than some other developed countries in the world. And you know, infant and child mortality rate, the number of people you lose right at the beginning, also adds to the average lifespan. So the fewer people you lose in the first year of life increases the lifespan. Homicide rates show show great differences. And even in, you can think of, aside from homicide rates, just countries that are war ravaged. Violence is definitely going to decrease the average lifespan. And the reason I've been talking about having a good diet and being active, BMI, body mass index, as a measure of health, is very important in predicting your life expectancy. And really, the key is to live a long and healthy life. This chapter talks a little bit about centenarians, people who live to be 100 years of age. Is a very rare group. It seems like each year we have more and more centenarians in industrialized countries. Because of these improvements in health and well-being, we tend to get population distributions are starting to get more weighted towards the older part of the age spectrum. And you'll notice that there's a 7% increase in centenarians each year in industrialized countries. There are 72,000 centenarians in the United States. And look at this lady underneath me. This is my grandma-in-law, Viola McCrae. You'll see there's a picture of her in her 99th birthday. The picture right below me is her at her 100th birthday. And God willing, and the creek don't rise, as she likes to say, there will be a 101st birthday party for her. Good afternoon, Ebony. I see you're in here shining your sunny face. It's good to see you. Super centenarians, people who live to be 110 years or older. There's not that many in the world. There's only 300 to 400 of those in the world at any time. And you know what? They're not as sick as you think. But if you think about it, if you're going to live that long, you have to be extremely healthy, genetically, environmentally, all of these things. So of course they're not as sick as you think. And what I'm going to suggest to you is if we can live a healthy life, if we can engage in those proper health behaviors, hopefully we can compress the morbidity, which is delay the onset of those diseases that eventually kill us. Heart disease, #1 killer, high blood pressure, insulin levels. The longer you can delay any of these chronic health problems, the healthier and the healthier you live, and the longer you are likely to live. Speaking of Southeast Asia or Asia as a place that engages in these health behaviors, there was a recent study of Okinawa, which has the highest ratio of centenarians in the world. 34 people for every 100,000 managed to live to be over 100 years of age. What is important there? They eat a lot of fish and healthy foods and stay away from the high fatty foods that tend to cause heart disease in us Westerns. They have a lower stress lifestyle. The caring community, staying active in a sense of spirituality. These all seem to be characteristics of the Okinawan culture that lead to this highest ratio of centenarians in the world. So how can you improve your chances? What can you do for your diet? What can you do in learning about coping with stress that we talked about a couple of chapters ago? How can you find yourself a cohort of people to give you a sense of community and give you somebody to be active with? And how are you going to find a sense of meaning and spirituality in your life? These are all important factors that will lead to the compression of morbidity, to the increase of your well-being, and to the increase of your lifespan. You know what? People are living so old now that really we're not talking just about old age now. So this category of old age, of older adulthood, usually goes from 60, retirement, until death, 60 to 80. See, the thing is, people are living so long and so healthy now. And 60 is the new 40, and people are living so well now that now researchers are sort of dividing this older adulthood into two categories: the young old and the oldest old. And those kind of age deficits that we used to think were associated with the 60s and 70s, with a good diet, with a healthy lifestyle, with making the right choices and engaging in the right lifestyle choices, you can actually push those physiological deficits off until 85 or more. So we're going to talk about the young old and the oldest old. And when we say that he's not old, old is just a number. We're talking about one of those young old people that has engaged in the kinds of behaviors that will put off these indicators of mortality. Any questions so far? Fantastic. Let's go ahead and keep talking. So, your book then talks about theories, biological theories of aging. Why do people die? That's one of those million-dollar deep philosophical questions that you can think about late at night over a glass of wine with friends or whatnot. But why, in fact, do we get sick and die? And your book talks about several theories. Actually, a bunch of them. I'm only going to talk about 4 of them real quick. So, why do people get these sicknesses that kill them? Why do we get Parkinson's disease? Why do people get Alzheimer's disease that kill them? Why do we get heart disease and cancer and COPD? Why do these genetic diseases tend to attack people? And one theory is this evolutionary theory. If you think about it from an evolutionary standpoint, evolutionary forces and selection of the fittest would cause us to adapt and respond to diseases that occur prior to having offspring. But diseases that attack the human being after the childbearing years aren't going to show selective pressure, right? Because you can't pass on your genes. The genes have already been passed on before these illnesses kill you. So why do we have these diseases that only seem to attack us in old age, like Alzheimer's and some of these other diseases? One theory is that we haven't evolved immunities or defenses against these diseases because they occur in a particular period in our life. Now, why do people seem to become more frail and suffer more immune problems and be more likely to catch sicknesses that us young, healthy people don't catch? And your book talks about hormonal stress theory. What they argue is that heart rate and stress levels tend to get a little bit higher as you get older, and this increased stress level is associated with lower resistance and immunity to diseases. Things that normally don't kill people, like the flu. You have a higher death rate for people who are older than for people who are younger. Why is their immune system compromised? The idea is that these elevated heart rates and stress levels later in life decrease immune function of older people. Now, your book then talks about a couple of genetic or cellular process theories. If you look at that cool picture of that X chromosome over there in the corner, you'll see the end of the chromosome has these green little tips, these colored. This is added. You don't actually see these in chromosomes. But these tips of the chromosomes are called telomeres, and they are DNA sequences that caps chromosomes. Research has demonstrated that as cells divide and these chromosomes replicate, these little telomere ends begin to fray. And they fray and fray every time the cell is replicated. And the cellular clock theory argues that cells can probably divide a maximum of 75 to 80 times before these telomeres degrade all the way down to where these cells can't split. So the idea is that the cells that need to regenerate to keep us alive stop regenerating. And as we age, these new cells are less capable of dividing, which causes us to have sick cells, old cells that die, leading to organ failure and all of the other kinds of sicknesses that kill us. According to Leonard Hayflick, the supporter of the Hayflick, the demonstrator of the Hayflick phenomenon, the upper limit of life should probably be somewhere between 120 to 125 years, which is sort of the calculation based upon the cell division theory. Now, it turns out that evidence suggests that most people don't live beyond 120 to 125 years, right? Now, I don't know if any of you have heard of free radicals, but there's also a theory that your book talks about, free radical theory. And aging is caused by normal metabolic processes in cells that produce these unstable oxygen molecules called free radicals that ricochet inside cells, damaging DNA and other structures. And as we go through our life, we create more of these free radicals that do more damage to our DNA and cellular structures, so that we begin to have the organ and system failures that are associated with aging and death. Now, research suggests that overeating is associated with increase in free radicals, and it turns out that having a restricted calorie intake as you get older in life is actually associated with a longer life. So as you get older, really, we're going to try to want to cut down those calories as much as possible while still getting the adequate protein, minerals, and vitamins that you're supposed to get. So these are all sort of, if you will, philosophical answers to the question, why do people die? Who knows? But here's some evidence you might look at. Your book also talks about mitochondrial theory and some other theories, but these are the only ones that I would probably ask you about on the homework or the test. Now, if you remember, we've been talking about neurological change throughout life, and I suggested to you that our brains are born largely complete, and that at birth with structures and all of the neural structures, but these neural structures grow and become more exuberant with their growth, and these neurons get a little bit bigger, and they grow these exuberant sort of dendritic growths that sort of cause the brain to expand in size. They begin to connect in certain patterns, and certain areas of cell connections die, and others mature and become more innervated. And that's sort of what happens as the brain matures and grows. Now, as we get towards late adulthood, you're going to see the brain change in another way as we begin to lose some of our cognitive abilities. The brain actually loses 5 to 10% of its weight between the ages of 20 and 90. Now, this brain volume decreases due to the shrinkage of neurons and the lower number of synapses and the complexity of the neural connections between the areas of your brain. You're going to get most shrinkage right here in the prefrontal cortex. Now, this is not related to the loss of neurons. Just as you didn't grow any more neurons after birth, you don't really lose them towards the end of your life. It's the connections and the exuberance of the connections that really changes as you move through late adulthood. Now, as I suggested to you, was it last week when we were talking about intellectual functioning, cognitive functioning, and I talked to you about fluid and crystallized intelligence, and the underlying mechanism that seems to lead to the decreases in our cognitive functioning appears to be the slowing down of the neural impulses in the brain and spinal cord. So the brain actually doesn't work as quickly as it used to. And this affects our physical coordination and our intellectual performance, because brain areas have to work pretty quickly if they're going to coordinate to one another. This is reduced to reduction in synaptic functioning, as well as the actual production of neurotransmitters in your brain. Now, you're still, in a sense, replacing old neurons. And you know what? An old dog can learn new tricks. So if you stimulate that brain, you will see some dendritic growth, even until late adulthood. So please keep playing those games. Do those crossword puzzles. Go play bingo with your friends. Keep reading. You want to stimulate that brain so that you do get the dendritic growth. And you know what? Your brains actually begin to rewire and start to, the hemispheres of your brain work together better as you get older, which helps compensate for the loss of speed in the brain. So this decrease in lateralization and this rewiring of brain areas to work together actually helps protect you from the behavioral deficits you would otherwise be experiencing. Just want to stop and say hello to Eric Fleming showing up and Andre Williams. Hi, folks. We're talking a little bit about the physical changes that occur in the brain as we move through late adulthood, which is 60 to 80. And as I suggested, you can push that off as late as possible if you will just engage in stress, good stress functioning, good diet, good exercise, and stimulating that brain. So there are ways that you can sort of push off these cognitive and neurological delays, folks. Physical changes. Of course, as you're getting older, you're going to get those wrinkles and the age spots. And you know, this is a cruel joke for me, but you get shorter as you age due to bone loss in your vertebrae. I only managed to aspire to 5'6". I can't believe I'm going to lose an inch as I get older and move down to 5'5", which just doesn't seem fair to get this much shorter, right? Now, you know, my dad, he's the same size as me in terms of height, and he doesn't look any thinner than I do. But you know what? He weighs about 15 pounds less than I do. And you know why? It's because I got these big muscles. And my dad's muscles are kind of atrophying and he's sort of turning to bush, if you will. So what you're going to see here is this picture below me is that as you age, you're actually going to lose weight in a sense, unless you eat. If you have the same body size, you're going to lose weight because your body composition is going to change. And you're going to lose less muscle and gain a little bit more fat. So that's sort of the change that's going to happen as you get older. Now, you still need to exercise and you can still slow that down like any of these other biological processes if you get in the gym and do your reps. So I'm telling you, 5 days a week, Dr. Roddenberry is in the gym lifting heavy weights because I want to be stronger. Nope. Well, yes, sort of. But I just want to postpone this muscle loss, which is an inevitable part of growing older. So your lung capacity drops 40% between 20 and 80, and the jogging and long distance running that you could do as a younger person is now going to be a little bit more difficult. And there's going to be an increase in cardiovascular disorders during this period. And you know what? 2/3 of all older adults have high blood pressure. So you really want to exercise and watch that diet during this period, because there are things you can do to decrease your level of blood pressure, right? So illness, obesity, anxiety, stiffening of the blood vessels, lack of exercise, any of these factors is associated with high blood pressure. So you want to learn how to cope with stress and to exercise to keep that weight down and keep those arteries nice and flexible. You know, falling is a real danger during this stage. My dad has fallen quite a few times. He's 81 now, and he's actually got a prosthetic leg. So he's 81 and missing a leg. And he's fallen down the stairs a couple of times. And that's a real danger. He's been lucky so far. But I really, really get on my father about being careful when he's walking and to use his cane, because he gets a little ahead of himself sometime, and he hurts himself. And fracturing a hip at an advanced age is not a good thing to do. Quite a few of people who, older adults who break their hip, die within 1 year. So you want to avoid the falls. Women are at a higher risk of falling. And you know what? Falling is the #1 cause of accidental death for older adults. So you really, really want to be careful with your older adult family members. And as I suggested, if you keep moving those muscles and exercise, it's going to make you just a little more agile, which will help prevent those falls that you might otherwise have. 5 days. 5 days. What'd you say, 5 days? I'm not sure what your reference is, Eric. I might have said something. I have no idea what I said. Okay, vision does decline during late adulthood. And you know, the bummer of it is a decline in visual abilities is sort of going to sort of decrease your activity level as an adult, which may actually in turn make you sicker and less healthy and lead to an earlier death. So a decline in visual abilities is really important, and you want to try to make sure you stay on mom and dad's vision and make sure that you try to protect that vision for it as long as possible. People who don't have vision are going to spend less time taking care of themselves. Mom and dad aren't going to look as put together. They're not going to take care of the house. They're going to have fewer friends, and they're not going to go out and do things. And it's all this stimulation and social interaction which acts as a protective factor against death and sickness. So you really want to worry about vision. Visual processing speed slows down. You don't get as much light in your eyes, so old people have trouble driving at night. My dad has trouble driving at night. Your sort of vision narrows a little bit, and it's just more difficult to drive at night. If any of you have family members who are in late adulthood, they almost all will tell you that they like to get home before dark because they can't see as well at night. Depth perception declines a little bit as you get older. I've got a friend that I go out to eat with, and if I let him drive, it really takes him a long time to pull out in traffic because his depth perception isn't as good as it used to be. And so he's afraid of getting hit by a car, so he doesn't pull out in spaces where he typically could pull out as a driver, right? My dad had cataracts removed about 2 months ago. He was really nervous about that. It turns out the procedure is kind of quick and easy. And basically that was just a thickening in his eye lenses, and it caused him to have trouble seeing. He wasn't seeing any well. And it's pretty common during late adulthood, with 30% of people aged 70 and older having this. My grandma, who's 100, had cataracts removed. My dad's had cataracts removed. And you know what? Quite a few of us will have to have those cataracts removed at some point in late adulthood. Glaucoma is a less common disorder, but it can damage the optic nerve and vision because of pressure created by fluid buildup in the eye. If you get your eyes checked every year and they can do the glaucoma, the eye pressure test, they can keep a check on that glaucoma so you don't have damage to the optic nerve. And macular deterioration, which is a deterioration of the retina and the rods and cones on the retina, which corresponds typically to the focal center of the retina and sort of creates a black spot in your field of vision. If you look at this picture below me, this is sort of what a person with macular degeneration would experience. This is hard to treat, and this is the leading cause of blindness in older adults. Now, you're also going to experience other changes in your other senses as well. Hearing is also important too, and it's hard to interact with the world if your hearing isn't as good. I remember we got hearing aids for Grandma probably about 20 years ago when she was 80. And when she doesn't have her hearing aids in, it is not easy for her to hear you. And if you're not going to be as active if you don't hear as well. Now, it turns out that all of our hearing changes, that as we get older, our ears become less sensitive to higher frequencies of sound. A couple of weeks ago, I sent a website where you can actually check the age of your ears using hearing frequency tests. And it is bizarre how accurately this test can peg your age based upon the frequency that you can hear. Hearing aids and cochlear implants are more likely as you move into the later stage of older adulthood. So my grandma at 85, I think it was, got her hearing aids in. And if you do have hearing and visual loss, the loss is going to be a little steeper after the age of 75. So again, that's the reason we differentiate between the young old and the oldest old. Now, there is some impairment in sense of touch for most people at this age. We're less sensitive to touch in our lower extremities, and we're less sensitive to those general aches and pains that accompany older adulthood. Not the real serious pains like a broken arm or a stab wound, but just those small, low-level aches and pains that bother people in their 30s and 40s. You become less sensitive to them as you move into later adulthood. Now, this helps us cope with the chronic pain that comes with being older. However, sometimes it can mask more serious problems that need to be treated. And so when you're talking to your parents and your older grandparents, sometimes you're going to want to take them to the doctor, even if they tell you it doesn't hurt that bad. Because what they may be doing is their lack of sensitivity may be masking a more serious problem that needs to be treated. And you know what? 2/3 of us are going to report some sort of persistent pain. Okay? Again, smell and taste also begins to change around the age of 60 as well. And it really, again, begins to decline in an even more steeper fashion in the oldest late adulthood, like we mentioned earlier, after the age of 80. And you know, the sense of smell is the only sense that doesn't go through the thalamus. And there are a ton of connections from your olfactory cortex to your memory cortex and your temporal lobes. And that's why foods a lot of times evoke memories of childhood experiences. Some of you may remember your favorite Christmas meal from when you were a child. And so the sense of smell is really, really important to people's sense of happiness. And what you're going to see is that a decreased sense of smell sometimes is associated with an increase in less levels of depression. Have I heard about the link between hearing loss and dementia? No, I have not. Oh, you're talking about the lifting. Yeah, I'm a beast, man. Come to the gym. I will work you out and we will lift some heavy weights, Eric. But no, I haven't heard about the link between hearing loss and dementia. I will go do some research and find out about it because as the teacher I should know, right? So thanks for bringing that to my attention. Okay, you know what? Look at this chart right beside me here. And what you're going to see is that as you get older, you are most likely going to have some sort of chronic problem that bothers you. Sciatica, back pain, cardiovascular problems, high cholesterol, high blood sugar. As you get older, and you look at this, at 65 years and older, almost 80% of us have at least one or two chronic conditions. So unfortunately, you know, you're going to have some problems. And one of the things that Nana had was diabetes, or high blood sugar levels. So Nana, in her 80s and 85s, she only had that one illness, but we had to mess with her blood sugar level. Actually, I take that back. She had high blood pressure as well. So chronic diseases with slow onset and long duration are common in late adulthood. And Nana's had high blood pressure and high blood sugar for about 20 years. Now, what are the leading causes of death during this age? Heart disease, cancer, and accidents finally lose their king spot. Accidents move all the way down to number 7 as chronic respiratory disease moves up into the 3rd spot as the leading cause of death in late adulthood. Actually, COPD, chronic, what does the O stand for? Chronic something pulmonary disorder is obstructive. Thank you, Eric. COPD actually killed my mom at the age of 67. She suffered with it for about 5 or 6 years and she couldn't put down those cigarettes. She smoked like a freight train and COPD killed her at 67. So you'll see the leading causes of death, 1, 2, and 3. Accidents are still number 7. Nearly 60% of 60 to 75-year-olds will die from cancer or cardiovascular disease. My 81-year-old father has a great attitude towards life, and he often jokes about it. He's had cancer and 3 heart attacks. Cancer took his leg, and he's had 3 heart attacks, and he's also wrecked his car 3 times. So we often joke that he's indestructible because everything that should have killed him is already come and gone. But these are the leading causes of death. And remember, as we suggested on 3 charts ago, half of Falls are the #1 cause of accidental death during late adulthood. Now, some people are going to experience later in life osteoporosis, which is the extensive loss of bone tissue, which will cause older adults to walk with a stoop. Most of the osteoporosis cases are going to involve females, and sometimes I think they give you hormone replacement therapy is used as a treatment in order to prevent or slow down osteoporosis. So mostly affecting female, and it's going to cause that stooped walk. Arthritis. My dad has really bad arthritis, and if you look at his fingers, they go in weird directions. His fingers are actually twisted and bent by arthritis, and it's caused by inflammation of the joints, and it causes him to have pain, stiffness, and movement problems. My dad can't golf anymore because he can't hold a golf club. He's gotten to the point where he's going to have to give up his bowling league. He's bowled up until last year at 80, and I'm not sure he can even put his fingers in a bowling ball because they're so bent and twisted. The doctor actually suggested to him, yeah, we can do surgery. We can go in there and scrape the inflammation out of your joints. It'll probably come back, but we can do it. And my dad was like, no, thank you very much. I'm not going to let you cut on my knuckles and scrape the inflammation out, especially if it's just going to come back. But arthritis does become more common at this age group. It's related to vitamin D loss, estrogen loss, and again, lack of exercise. Have I told you how many times it's important for you to get out and do a walk if you can, to lift something if you can, get out of your chair to move just a little bit if you can. Okay? All right. That's all I had to say today with regard to physical development. So we talked about the difference between maximum and average lifespan, what affects lifespan, some characteristics about people who have exceptionally long lifespans, some answers to the question, why do people die? We talked about how the brain changes in late adulthood. We talked about how your lungs and your physical abilities change as you get older. We talked about how your sensory abilities change in late adulthood. And then we talked about some of the leading causes of illness and death in later adulthood. Does anybody have any questions for me? If you don't, I'm going to go ahead and log off the lecture. I will take your questions in the chat bar for another couple of minutes, or you can send me a remind, and I will be more than happy to talk to you on Remind. Until then, I will see you hopefully Wednesday at webinar, or if not, I'll see you Thursday in lecture. Take care and have a great day. Hello.